Hi there, my name is Ryan, a beautiful little city builder released into early access recently, and I want to talk all about it. It's called Dorfromantik by German studio Tucana Interactive. It's a tile laying game where you try to extend the land you create by fulfilling simple objectives. That might be the objective, but the power of this game's aesthetic is reminiscent of Townscaper, where there is a joy in simply putting down a tile where you think it might look nice. That pull between the aesthetic pleasure of play and the strategic objectives inherent in the game form the basis of this very chill city builder. I want to talk about how it achieves such a relaxing play experience by looking at two other games within this genre, Carcassonne and Islanders. So let's take a quick look at Dorfromantik and how it operates. It's a tile laying game based on rural landscapes. The player has a stack of tiles on the right of the screen. Each turn they are presented with the tile they must lay down. They can rotate it before placing it down, there are some restrictions with rivers and rail tracks, but aside from that the player is trying to extend the amount of tiles in their stack by completing these objectives, like having a certain number of buildings in this town, or adjacent trees to build up a lovely forest. The developers had this to say about how the game came to be. We drew inspiration for the development from experience from our childhood, which we all spent in various rural areas in Germany and Switzerland. The game word, Dorfromantik, is an idealised, romanticised depiction of these landscapes, and is intended to capture the power in the tranquility and closeness to nature. It's maybe not so much a city builder as it is a countryside builder, and it certainly achieves that romanticised depiction of rural areas. Sometimes laying down a tile isn't a matter of strategic concern, but of the possible aesthetic beauty of the landscape you are creating. The sound design, music and art style all combine to support that playstyle, where the right move isn't necessarily the optimal move. Aside from these aesthetic details in Dorfromantik, it's also doing interesting things mechanically to make it a particularly relaxing experience. For this, let's take a look at its legacy through the tabletop game Carcassonne. Designed by Klaus-Jürgen Wrede, Carcassonne is an incredibly popular tile-laying game that was released in the year 2000, a decade when the popularity of board games would explode. Carcassonne is seen by many as a great gateway game into the hobby because of how simple its premise is. A large stack of square tiles sit within reach of all players, whereupon they each take turns drawing one tile and adding it to a playful mosaic in the centre of the table. There are certain rules governing how players can set down their tiles, after which they can then add one of their meeple workers to gather points. After all tiles have been drawn and added to the board, the players tally up their scores and see who wins, but not before each player can admire the countryside town they have all built together, a core pleasure of any city builder. A simple tile laying premise, yes, but the staying power of Carcassonne is the depth that can arise from that competitive to and fro. This competitive nature of the game means that each player will consider how to block their opponent's gathering points and further their own interest instead. The competitive nature of the game gets in the way of that kind of city builder setting. Yes, players can still admire the town they've built together, but the purpose behind the laying of each tile is skewed more towards point gathering. In Dorfromantik, that competitive element isn't there. Players are free to place tiles without considering how other players might screw them over. But there are other constraints which guide the player's hand in the game. To help us understand those, let's take a look at Islanders. Islanders is a relaxing city builder from the innocent time of 2019. Players find themselves looking at the blank canvas of an island with a quick choice to make. One of two building sets. Each will give the player an array of buildings to place on the island, each one netting points based on its proximity to other types of buildings. Farms get bonuses when next to windmills, lumberjacks benefit from nearby trees. When they hit a certain point total in the bottom left, the player gets another choice of two building sets. After a good long while of filling up this island, the player may have earned enough points to move to another island, as shown in the bottom right of the screen, where they can start the cycle anew. If the player doesn't reach either points total to be provided a new island or new buildings, then the game is over and they begin again. This continuous circle is curious given one of the pleasures of the genre is in appreciating all of the choices the player has made to create this civilization. but after a while, the player will run out of space on the island and must move on. It's beautiful in its own way, but the trappings of the genre make me forlorn at having to leave each island. The part of Islanders which connects it to Dorfromantik is that playing to preserve play itself, rather than playing to build. What I mean by this is why some people are keen to label both Islanders and Dorfromantik as puzzle or strategy games instead of city builders. Their objectives direct players to make choices which are in the interests of points over building. Otherwise, the player doesn't get to play for much longer. This choice between aesthetic joy and strategic preservation is prevalent in every choice in Islanders. Each building placement comes with an aura and information showing exactly how many points will be earned. In contrast, Dorfromantik dials down that information ever so slightly, so that the choice between aesthetics and strategy isn't always confronting the player. What this means is that Islanders sits a little more closely to the likes of Tripletown, where you might be hyper-focused on how you might preserve your own existence in the game. By abstracting that scoring information a little more, Dorfromantik strikes that perfect balance for players, choosing between aesthetics and strategy. It is a balance so perfectly poised that it reminds me of the balance between order and chaos in board game Dream On, but that is literally its own video on my channel. This mechanic of preservation in both Islanders and Dorfromantik operates like a ticking clock and can be rather stressful in games. Both games have such a relaxing aesthetic, but Dorfromantik presents its information in a way that even when seeing your remaining tiles tick away, you have naught but appreciation for the time spent laying every single one of them. If you've got this far, thank you for watching. I post super infrequently here, but I'm trying to keep making analysis videos every now and then. If you want to see more, I hear the subscribe button is good for that.